Right, ladies and gentlemen, and Africa as a whole, welcome to Africa Talk to Me. This is a program where we look at our situation as Africans, from Cape to Cairo, just to see where we're getting it wrong and why it is that we are at the end of the queue, and in terms of development, economics, politics, and everything as a whole. Today, I'm looking at Zimbabwe, and I've got with me Mr. Moses Chamboko, the Secretary General of Zunde, which is one of the opposition parties in Zimbabwe today. Welcome, Mr. Chamboko.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, for us to understand where we're coming from, I'll ask Mr. Chamboko briefly about his organization, so that at least we know where we stand, and then we'll go on. Mr. Chamboko, I understand you're the Secretary General of Zunde. Can you just give us a brief overview of your political party and where you stand in Zimbabwean politics?
Thank you. Zunde stands for Zimbabweans United for Democracy, and it's an organization that was formed in 2013 as a result of the elections of 2013, which Zimbabweans believe were stolen or were not run properly. And after those elections, the opposition was sort of in a paralyzed, if I may say, and we thought we needed to revive the opposition spirit. And this is how Zunde came about. So a few Zimbabweans in the diaspora came together and formed an organization that was meant to revive the democratic fight, because the main opposition, MDCT in particular, appeared to, they didn't know what to do after that result of July 2013. So this is how we came about. And since then we've been pushing our message strongly and consistently, and our message is that we need a democratic, peaceful, and prosperous Zimbabwe. And that's what we're fighting for.
Okay, thank you. In Zimbabwe recently, there's been some changes where 37 years of Mugabe's rule has finally ended. But where do you place yourself now with the new dispensation that's there? Like, we've got a new president, and more or less he's in the same political party as Mugabe was. But there's a new president, there's a new thinking, there's a new focus. Where do you fit in as Zunde? As it stands?
That's a very good question. The departure of former President Robert Mugabe does not mean the end of everything that we've been fighting for. If anything, it means that we're moving into a new era, and we hope that his departure will trigger the beginning of new things for Zimbabwe. And given what has happened, of course, we are still in a wait and see kind of mode. We've got a new government, and we believe this government will do something different from what we've seen in the past. And the new president, Emerson Mnangagwa, has been saying all the right things from day one when he became president. He has raised hope for Zimbabweans. And now we're waiting to see what happens next. And if he does what he says, I'm sure Zimbabwe will be moving in a new direction, a better direction.
Would you say your role it will be irrelevant because he's doing the right things, or do you think you're going to continue as opposition, or what do you think? Do you think you're going to join him, or you still stand as independent, as opposition as you are?
For democracy to prevail, you need opposition. Even if you have got the best government in the world, you still need to have opposition. And the primary function of opposition is to keep the government in check. If you don't have opposition, it means the government can sleep on the wheel. And the opposition's role is to make sure that government does not sleep on the wheel. And you don't only criticize, but you also give some ideas. And you give ideas to the government, you come up with alternative policies, and if you've got a good government in place, they will certainly listen and implement. I might give an example here of Botswana. Botswana has got a very strong opposition, but for 51 years, it has been ruled by the same party.
Yeah.
Why is this happening, and why are the Tswana people so happy? What happens is the opposition thinks and the government implements.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where we want to get to. We need to have a strong opposition that brings out brilliant ideas, and if you've got a good government in place to implement, and at the end of the day, the person that benefits is the ordinary Zimbabwean.
Looking at that, I know you don't represent other opposition forces, like we mentioned earlier, the MDC as one formidable force of opposition to ZANU-PF all along. Where do you think they are? Because as it stands, I've not seen them or any comments or how they're going to proceed as being opposition. And I'm not sure exactly where they stand. What do you think? Well, what do you think they have to? Well, I know you're opposition, you probably cannot advise them, but I'm not sure of their relevance as to today, based on the political changes. Because all along it was Mugabe must go, Mugabe must go, but all of a sudden Mugabe is gone. Well, what next?
I think that's a very good question. Mugabe must go was just a mantra and not a policy.
Yeah.
So I think some people in the opposition mistook that mantra for a policy.
Yeah.
What the opposition needs to do now is to come up with alternative policies that are effective and that are going to help the ordinary Zimbabwean. I won't say the opposition will cease to be relevant, but what I would probably say is that there's no pressure on them to change their course. They can't continue to say the same thing because some of the things that they've been saying have been overtaken by events.
Yeah.
So it's time for the opposition to do some serious introspection, particularly the MDCT, which is the main opposition. Do some serious introspection and say, this is where we are, what do we do to move forward?
Yeah.
And I'll be very blunt here. And I know it's a sensitive topic, but we can't avoid sensitivity all the time. It's time for the MDC to have new leadership. And I think that's the starting point for them.
Yeah.
If they are going to be stuck with the same leader, I don't see them getting anywhere.
Do you think this is something MDC would democratically think about, or replacing their leadership, or they're just gonna, they're just going to keep us there with Changirai being the president? Do you think it's something that is on their cards, or maybe someone needs to remind them that, like you've rightfully said, I think it's a fair opinion that at least they need new leadership, which is everywhere else. Like ZANU-PF needed new leadership for a long time. Okay, now there's been some changes there. We're not judging what has happened, but there's new leadership which we can't ignore. But do you think MDC has got that on their cards, or do they discuss it, or is something that is not discussable as well, or they are not as democratic as they say they are?
Yeah. From where I stand, I think it's a very sensitive topic for them.
Yeah.
And somebody has to say it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be that person saying it here and now, that the MDC needs new leadership to move forward. Mr. Changirai has done extremely well as a democratic fighter for many years, particularly from 1999. He'll be remembered for that. But he needs also to remember that institutions must survive beyond personalities.
Yeah.
We've just seen from ZANU-PF that ZANU-PF will continue to be there with or without Mugabe. Mugabe just left, and we thought Mugabe's exit would mean the end of ZANU-PF.
Yeah.
But if anything, the opposite has happened. ZANU-PF now looks a lot stronger than it was when Mugabe was there.
Yeah.
And who knows, MDC might be in the same in the same kind of situation. They really need to move forward from where they are. They need to bring in new leadership. I won't say who should come in, but they need new leadership. They need new energy. They need new ideas, and they can only get that from a new leader. And I'm sure President Changirai has got, or Moses Chamboko has got 3 deputies. Out of those 3 deputies, certainly there must be somebody who can step forward and take the MDC forward. So this is what I would say. I know like I said, it's a very sensitive topic for them, but it's time they realize that they cannot continue to pretend that it's business as usual, because it's not.
Yeah. But what do you think? Do you think Morgan has to retire, or has he any place in politics in future, or what do you reckon?
I wish I could be his advisor. Unfortunately, I'm not his advisor. But what I would say is, if he stood down today and became an advisor in the background, I think he would earn much more respect than if he stayed on until, in the world of change management, you've got two options. You have to manage change, or change will manage you. So I think he must make one of the two choices. Does he want change to manage him, or he wants to manage change? If I were him, I would manage change, and the best time to do it is now.
There's been talk all along about prior to Mugabe exit, there was talk of the opposition coming together so that the next elections, which presumably should happen in April, May, or June, up to June, that the opposition should come together and fight against Mugabe, so to speak. Okay, is that still there, or was it ever there, or it was just a talk?
I strongly believe that a coalition is the best way to go. ZANU-PF is a party with a very long history. They've been around since 1963. And at the moment, I don't see any single party in Zimbabwe that can stand against ZANU-PF and win. Even if we're going to have free and fair elections, given what Mnangagwa has been saying of late, I can see that the opposition is going to have a very tough time. And a coalition, in my opinion, is the best way to go, which is one thing that Zunde has been pushing from day one. As I said before, Zunde stands for Zimbabweans United for Democracy, and it is a natural coalition on its own. So what we're saying is we need that coalition to stand against ZANU-PF in the next election. And if Shanghai stood alone, or the MDC stood alone, I don't see them winning enough votes to destroy ZANU-PF. If Joyce Mjuru stood alone, I don't see them winning enough votes to destroy ZANU-PF. If anybody else did the same, I don't see them getting anywhere. But one thing that I can say here, without sounding like I'm vouching for Joyce Mjuru or anybody else, I think suddenly Joyce Mjuru has become a factor. And if she fails to win at least 10 seats in the coming election, I'll be surprised. And I think she has got Mashonal in Central, she has got Kazu Mashonal in her pocket. And of the key parties that are there now, I don't see any party that will penetrate Mashonal more than Joyce Mjuru will do. But alone, she can't win government. She can't become the next president. So I think the best thing that needs to happen is to have a coalition of the opposition.
Much as you say that, but is there any coalition now? Is there something that is happening, or is there some sort of agreement as we stand here?
Well, I don't know if you have followed some of statements from Zunde of late. We came out a couple of weeks ago and spoke strongly against what we called the mushrooming of coalitions. Every Tom and Dick gets up in the morning and forms what they call a coalition, and we're saying that's not the coalition that we're looking for. As Zunde, what we advocate for is a genuine, effective, and inclusive coalition. To date, that has not happened. What we've seen is people coming together, forming something that they call something which is not a coalition in our opinion. MDC have got what they call the MDC Alliance. To us, it's not the end, it's just the beginning. They've taken the first steps towards a coalition, but you cannot have a coalition, to be honest, without MDC, which is the main party, opposition party. And I also think that you cannot have an effective coalition without Joyce Mjuru, because she suddenly become a factor. So as long as we don't have Tsvangirai and Joyce Mjuru together, in my opinion, there's no coalition.
There's been talk that the main opposition, the MDC, that Tsvangirai would only accept any coalition on condition he is the candidate. He becomes the candidate of that coalition. Is that a true statement, or what do you have for?
Well, we've had it said, but I think I'll come back again to what I've just said, that it's time for the MDC to change their leadership.
Yeah.
So I don't see him becoming a leader of the coalition
Yeah.
when he's not a leader of the MDC.
Yeah.
So the first thing that should happen is we need leadership change in the MDC.
Yeah.
And that leadership change will determine the direction, the shape, and the form of the coalition.
Much as I understand that point, but like elections are looming. It's like 6 months away, where elections are supposed to be held. Do you think, in your own opinion, as Zunde, that Tsvangirai would step down now to give a new impetus or a new leadership to allow for the next elections to happen? Do you think, from your own where you're sitting, do you think that will happen within the course of the next 6 months, or we know it might have been discussed. We know it's a subject that they possibly do not discuss about, but maybe along the sidelines. But do you think, for their relevance, for them to be relevant, that I understand, they need to have a genuine coalition with all the other political parties, right? Whereupon they will have to have one candidate representing all, right? Do you think it's a possibility that Tsvangirai might step down now, or do you think it could be a strategy they could come up with, or much as I know you're suggesting to them, but do you think anything will happen to that sort, or it's a dictatorship, opposition, so to speak, or leadership?
I wouldn't call it a dictatorship opposition leadership, as they've put it. But in all honesty, I think Tsvangirai has done what he was meant to do.
Yeah.
And we have come to that point where we believe that we need to move on from him to another leader.
Yeah.
And the point that I want to stress again is that we all thought ZANU-PF would never exist for a day or two without Robert Mugabe.
Yeah.
It has been more than 4 weeks without him,
Yeah.
and ZANU-PF has become stronger by the day.
Yeah.
So what makes the MDC think that if Tsvangirai were to step down, the MDC would become weaker? I want to argue that the MDC would actually become stronger if Tsvangirai stood down today and handed over to somebody who is younger, who is energetic, who can bring in new energy to the opposition. And I'm sure, I won't give names, but I'm sure out of the 3 deputies, there's somebody who can step forward. I've got a lot of respect for all 3 deputies. Mozuri is a very decent man. Kupe is a very decent woman. Tsvangirai is, Nelson Chamisa is a very energetic young man. And I think that team will take the MDC forward quite easily.
There's a talk that registered, there's about like 80 political parties, in opposition parties in Zimbabwe that are registered as we speak today. Right. In all these discussions that are happening where there could likely be a coalition, are they all involved, or it's just a few that are talking about it, or the others are just on paper? Is there anything happening?
I've heard about 75. The last count that I did was 75 political parties. But to be honest, I think a lot of them are just individuals that are not happy with something in another party, and they just want to come out and form something else. But to be honest with you, I don't think we've got more than 10 serious political parties in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And those 10 serious political parties should come together and form an effective coalition. And beyond that, there are also individuals that I've got a lot of respect for. Simba Makoni, in my opinion, is one of the most decent Zimbabweans that we've had. In my own opinion, is probably the president that Zimbabwe has never had. And I think Simba Makoni should contribute some. And I was a little bit disappointed when Emerson Mnangagwa announced his new cabinet. And I had imagined that people like Simba Makoni would be brought in one way or the other. He is a technocrat, he's an honest man, and he has got a history. And I would want such people to be involved, whether they're in the opposition or they're with the government. But we need people like that for Zimbabwe to move forward.
From your opposition perspective, now when we're looking at Zimbabwean politics now, Where do you think the Zimbabwe is going now? Where do you think it's going? And if you were to advise the sitting president on where, because I think we all agree that the best benefit is for the people, whereupon whatever happens, whether it's the government, the opposition comes up with it, the government implements it, or whoever suggests, what suggestions, where do you think Zimbabwe should go from where we are now? Because now Mugabe is gone, it's a new dispensation, so to speak, but where do you think Zimbabwe has to go now?
Yeah, I think Zimbabwe has got a lot of bright future if we do the right things.
Yeah.
And for me, I think the starting point is undoing what Mugabe did for the past 7 years.
Yeah.
Mnangagwa started doing that. We all know where Mugabe went wrong.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, for the first 10 years, I think Robert Mugabe did a lot of good things for Zimbabwe. Then for the rest of his tenure, he failed. And the reason why he failed is he concentrated more on power and forgot about the people. Now we want a new dispensation that looks more at the people, what can we do for the people, rather than focus on power. And I think Mnangagwa has started doing the right things. Corruption is one of the biggest problems that Zimbabwe has had for 37 years.
Yeah.
And we've never seen a high level, a high profile person within politics or within the social setup who has been prosecuted for corruption in 37 years.
Yeah.
And are we saying corruption does not exist in Zimbabwe? If it does, what have we done about it? And Emerson Mnangagwa started working very hard in that respect. And I think if we get that out of the way, we are on track. And the next thing that I want to talk about is resources. Zimbabwe is a very rich country in terms of natural resources. And for the past 37 years, we've literally been sitting on wealth without tapping it.
Yeah.
And we now want a government that is going to focus on tapping that wealth that we have, which is sitting underground. Mugabe's government failed, but one thing that they failed to destroy is our natural wealth. It's still there. So it's now time to focus on that and take Zimbabwe back to where it used to.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask as well is the political setup. You know, there was a talk during the Mugabe era that the security forces, the army, and all, that they're fearful, some, where if democracy cannot thrive in such an environment where, much as we agree, the MTC is tried to dislodge. What do you think? Do you think there's going to be any change to that mindset, or whether it was real or not real? But we think in all tyrannies, it's a real scenario. Do you think there's going to be any changes, or has the new president come up with any changes where you think maybe at some stage the opposition is free to be opposition in the sense of the word? Do you have hope for such a change? No?
It's probably too early to make a call on that. But what I would want to say is that having military or ex-military people in the government is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
I would give an example which is very close to home, Botswana.
Yeah.
The current president, Ian Khama, is a general. He came from the army. And I understand even his deputy is also a general.
Yeah.
And Ian Khama, when he came into politics, the first thing that he did, he took off his uniform.
Yeah.
And the next thing that he did, he subjected himself fully to democratic processes.
Yeah.
So if we have the same thing in Zimbabwe, we've got military guys that have gone into politics, and if they subjected themselves fully to democratic processes, I can see them doing just like Botswana has done, just like another country has done. I mean, Buhari in Nigeria is a former soldier, and Obasanjo, he came in and he changed. A lot of things changed during Obasanjo's time. Why can't we have the same thing in Zimbabwe? what we don't want to see happening is somebody with one foot in politics and another foot in the army. That is wrong.
Yeah.
They have to choose where they want to be. If they want to be fully in politics, they should move fully into politics. If they want to be in the army, they should be in the army.
Right. This is the currently cash crisis that is in the country. From an economic perspective, what do you think should happen? How do you think this can be solved?
I think one of the contributory factors to the cash crisis is, we have people in Zimbabwe that bank money in their houses. People literally keep money under their pillows. And I think what the government must do is to discourage people from carrying cash.
Yeah.
People must use banks to bank money, they must not use their pillows to bank money. And if I were to come in with a policy, I would say there's no Zimbabwean who should carry more than $5,000 in cash on them. What do you need it for?
Yeah.
When a teacher earns probably $5,000 in a year or even less, why should somebody carry a teacher's salary in their pocket?
Yeah.
An annual salary in their pocket? I think it's wrong. And I've lived in the diaspora for a very long time, and I know that when you exit at the airport, when you live in countries, especially Australia, where I'm currently based, they will ask you at the airport, have you got more than $10,000 on you? If you have it, you have to justify why you are carrying $10,000 in cash.
Yeah.
And in Zimbabwe, why should anybody carry $10 million in their pocket? I think it's wrong. So the starting point for this government is to be very hard and come down hard on people that carry cash on them and let people bank their money so that the ordinary person can withdraw more than $50 from the bank.
Yeah.
We've got a situation now where somebody needs probably 5 days to be able to withdraw only $100, and that's untenable. And of course, the next thing that needs to happen in the long term is Zimbabwe needs to have its own currency. We cannot continue to use US dollars for the rest of our lives. And US dollar is supposed to be a stopgap measure.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be a permanent thing.
Did you foresee that happening? Because what has happened is that using the Zim dollar per se, depending on if they're going to come up with the Zim dollar, that the exchange rate or inflation will spiral because the mindset of the people is that they used to hold cash, so to speak, and sell it on the market. Because they stop right now as we speak that there's bond notes, but already people are selling those bond notes at US dollars at inflated prices to the bond notes. Do you see a possibility of that, or do you think that can be effective? Because already people have been, maybe for the past 10 years, used to that type of life. Do you think that can change, or what do you think the government can do to fix that?
I think it's something that has to change. It must change. The use of the US dollar is an admission that the economy has failed.
Yeah.
We saw it used in Mozambique. When the economy failed, they used the US dollar. If you go to Somalia today, they use the US dollar.
Yeah.
If you go to Afghanistan, they use the US dollar. That means that economy has failed. So we need to rebuild our economy, make it a normal economy. And once we do that, that's when we'll be able to use our own currency. And our own currency must be sustained by our own economy. Yeah. At the moment, we don't have much of an economy to talk about, and hence you see people using the US dollar. So we must come to a point where we are running a normal economy, functional economy, supported by our own currency.
If I may ask, from as a member of the opposition, there's been some changes where the new president has given back the land. You know, the land issue has always been a thorn. What's your comment as opposition on that scenario?
Right. Speaking on behalf of Zunde, our policy on land is that, or our belief around land is that land is not a political tool. Land is an economic asset, a national economic asset. And if I were to be very frank with you, I think land, the entire commercial land in Zimbabwe must be owned by government. There shouldn't be a single human being who owns land in Zimbabwe commercial land in Zimbabwe. Let it be on my government.